Look upon the burning skies of Prospero, acolytes. Witness the exact moment when the pursuit of absolute truth fractured the very foundation of our galaxy forever. A paradise of glass and gold, shattered into a million jagged memories. Here, enlightenment did not bring salvation. It ushered in an era of absolute ruin. The great libraries burned in silence. Infinite wisdom gathered over millennia turns to bitter ash, drifting through the suffocating currents of the great Imperial divide. The Emperor's executioners descended upon the scholars like a storm of ceramite and primal fury. They came not to conquer, but to completely erase everything. Brother fought against brother under a fractured firmament. The wolves of Fenris brought the Emperor's unyielding judgment to a world drowning in its own majestic arrogance. Defenders of forbidden lore stood firm. They unleashed unnatural storms, grasping at desperate sorceries that only pulled them deeper into the waiting jaws of the abyss. At the epicenter of this monumental tragedy knelt the Crimson King himself. A being of unparalleled intellect, crushed beneath the weight of his own disastrous foresight. He had sacrificed everything to warn the master of mankind, only to become the instrument of humanity's most catastrophic and irreversible failure in the cosmos. In his singular, sorrowful eye, one could see the reflection of a dying dream. The majestic spires of his domain collapsed under the relentless orbital strikes. Prospero wept tears of liquid glass. The ground trembled as ancient pyramids crumbled, burying the brightest minds of our species beneath mountains of scorched metallic debris. The flesh change, a curse thought long banished, returned with a vengeance. Warriors mutated in real time, their noble forms twisting into grotesque mockeries of the divine. Loyalty splintered like the crystal underfoot. The Thousand Sons realized, too late, that the boundless ocean of the warp is a predator that never stops hunting. Even the golden host of Terra marched upon the dust. Their halberds spun in lethal arcs, silencing the scholars with a terrifying mechanical efficiency of purpose. Magic shattered against pure, untainted duty. The Golden Guardians advanced without hesitation, delivering the Emperor's ultimate censure to those who dared gaze into the forbidden darkness. Every broken reflection screamed a silent litany of regret. The very fabric of reality groaned, tearing at the seams as unnatural energies saturated the besieged atmosphere. Finally, the Crimson King rose from the ashes. A deafening roar tore through the immaterium, unleashing a tidal wave of psychic wrath upon the descending wolves. The wolf and the Cyclops clashed in a duel that shook the foundations of the world. Two demigods locked in a tragic dance of absolute destruction. Ceramite rent and warp fire howled. It was a confrontation devoid of glory, merely a desperate struggle to salvage meaning from an ocean of overwhelming, infinite despair. In that blinding convergence of power, the fate of the Thousand Sons was sealed forever. They were doomed to wander the void as spectral husks indefinitely. All that remained was hollow armor and the eternal silence of the void. Thus began the darkest chapter of our glorious yet fundamentally fractured galactic empire. Welcome to the hidden depths of the Sanctum of Oaths, my faithful acolytes. What I reveal tonight is a strictly censored record of immense tragedy. Before us lies the condemned history of Primarch Magnus the Red and his fallen legion. They were the Emperor's most gifted scholars, now forever silenced. Their magnitude was unrivaled across the stars. They sought to illuminate the darkest corners of human ignorance with a radiant beacon of absolute psychic mastery. I hold here a forbidden fragment from the Heresy archives. It speaks of an era when the pursuit of enlightenment was their highest possible calling. Turn your minds back to the golden age of the Great Crusade. Before the devastating censure, there existed a shining jewel known simply as Prospero. It was a paradise crafted from pure thought and silver glass. The Thousand Sons walked these gleaming avenues, elevating our mortal understanding beyond previous limitations. Chief Librarian Ahriman and his noble brethren delved into the deepest mysteries. They utilized the warp not as a weapon, but as a boundless tool. From his towering sanctuary, the Crimson King looked upon his progeny with boundless paternal affection. He believed their combined intellect could conquer the very cosmos. On Prospero, psychic potential was meticulously honed into a rigorous academic discipline. They built architectural marvels without shedding a single drop of sweat or exertion. The Book of Magnus contained formulas that could command the elemental forces. It was a testament to a legion that sought to transcend human frailties. Warriors like Phocis Tikar balanced martial discipline with esoteric mastery perfectly. They walked a razor-thin edge, believing themselves entirely immune to the abyss below them. Vast subterranean archives housed the accumulated knowledge of countless conquered worlds. Nothing was considered too dangerous to study under the watchful gaze of the Cyclops. Their armor bore the proud scarab emblem, a symbol of endless rebirth and enlightenment. They were the undisputed architects of a newly illuminated Imperial era. Magnus dared to gaze deeper than any other being. His unparalleled intellect pierced the veil, charting unseen pathways through the treacherous currents of the Empyrean. Yet this insatiable hunger for the unknown fostered a dangerous arrogance. They failed to recognize that the great ocean of the warp constantly stared back. Their miraculous achievements masked a creeping dependency on immaterial forces. Every spell cast forged an invisible chain binding them to the deepest entities of chaos. The Emperor himself cautioned his son against such unrestrained exploration. He issued decrees designed to protect the Legion from the unseen predators hunting in darkness. But a mind accustomed to absolute freedom fiercely resents any boundaries. The scholars of Tisca viewed such warnings as mere ignorance from less enlightened souls. They continued their clandestine rituals in defiance of the Imperial edict. This profound hubris laid the tragic groundwork for their inevitable and utterly devastating downfall. The golden sunset of Prospero was a beautiful but deceiving illusion. The shadows cast by their magnificent libraries were already harboring unimaginable, planet-shattering nightmare forces. Observe closely, my acolytes, how these scholars fused arcane theory with imperial engineering. They anchored ethereal warp phenomena directly into physical ceramite plating, intricately. A standard Adeptus Astartes bolter became a conduit for raw, unfiltered telekinetic force. Phocis Tikar channeled his disciplined mind directly through the blessed weapon's firing mechanism. Chief Librarian Ahriman synchronized massive crystalline cogitators with human consciousness. Elaborate brass gears turned precisely in perfect rhythm with the psychic chants of his subordinate sorcerers. Every psychoreactive magazine was inscribed with protective runes before deployment. These microscopic sigils supposedly regulated the dangerous atmospheric pressure generated by their unnatural tactical ammunition flawlessly. Yet such systemic perfection blinded them to the ultimate reality. The immaterium is never fully bound by mere physical mechanisms or beautifully crafted metallic equations. The Book of Magnus itself was a marvel of dark engineering. Its pages were woven from psychoconductive fibers that hummed violently when exposed to warp frequencies. At the core of their grand machinery stood the Cyclops. His singular eye acted as a living focal lens for the planet's entire defensive grid matrix. Specialized servo skulls, augmented with psychic dampening fields, constantly monitored the Academy corridors. They purged any lingering chaotic resonance left behind by particularly demanding academic rituals systematically. Hear the rhythmic, heavy clanking of their intricate battle plate. Each interlocking ceramite segment was ritually cleansed and mathematically calibrated to withstand extreme, unnatural atmospheric pressure changes. The very architecture of Tisca served a highly functional, systemic purpose. Grand silver spires operated as massive capacitors, drawing raw Empyrean currents into heavily shielded vaults. Elaborate autoquills transcribed their telepathic communications continuously onto treated vellum. This mechanized bureaucracy ensured no vital insight was ever lost during their perilous astral projections. Ahriman personally calibrated the great astrolabes. These complex navigational instruments translated the chaotic nightmare geometry of the warp into comprehensible, heavily encrypted digital data streams. In standard military formations, they projected interlocking kinetic barriers. This unified tactical grid could theoretically deflect orbital bombardments through precise, mathematically calculated kinetic energy dispersion techniques. However, these mechanical safeguards were constantly pushed beyond their designed limits. Protective talismans overheated, quietly venting dangerous psychic buildup through hidden ceramic exhaust ports daily. The Primarch integrated himself directly into the planet's central cogitator network. He processed astronomical quantities of raw data, effectively becoming the ultimate omniscient mechanical overseer. Industrial lasers, guided by telepathic targeting arrays, carved massive crystalline structures. Their society was a flawless fusion of standard Imperial technology and unsanctioned magical industry. Even their primary plasma reactors hummed with an unnatural dual frequency. They hybridized standard Imperial plasma generation with dangerous thermal energies extracted from the deep warp. Legion Tech Marines maintained a delicate, terrifying balance. They replaced failing mechanical servos with temporary, localized telekinetic fields to keep their mighty dreadnoughts marching into battle relentlessly. We document these systemic triumphs not to praise them, but to understand their profound arrogance. They believed they could mathematically quantify the absolute darkness completely. Such extreme technological and mystical overreach could not be sustained forever. The foundational equations of their majestic empire were about to experience a catastrophic structural failure. Their beautiful equations were fundamentally flawed. They meticulously calculated the movements of the stars, yet completely ignored the encroaching shadows gathering right behind them. Chief Librarian Ahriman felt the agonizing shift first. The harmonious psychic choir of Tizca suddenly dissolved into a chaotic, terrifying symphony of absolute dissonance. The sacred book of Magnus slammed shut violently. Ancient protective wards inscribed upon the heavy metallic cover cracked under an immense, unseen external pressure. Invisible, kinetic barriers, designed to withstand cosmic radiation, flickered and failed. The mathematical perfection of their grand society collapsed within mere terrifying heartbeats. The Crimson King realized his catastrophic folly too late. His desperate telepathic warning to Terra had not saved the Imperium. It had damned Prospero entirely. The firmament tore open, raining iron and uncompromising judgment. The Emperor's sanction arrived not with words, but with a relentless storm of descending drop pods. Leman Russ emerged from the smoke like a primal force of nature. He brought no questions, only the cold, unyielding certainty of total planetary purgation. The Space Wolves unleashed their righteous fury upon the scholars. Beautiful academies were instantly transformed into brutal, uncompromising arenas of desperate, unforgiving survival. Majestic golden pyramids crumbled under relentless orbital bombardment. Centuries of accumulated wisdom were aggressively silenced beneath the thunderous, mechanical roar of Imperial artillery fire. Phocis Takar rallied his disoriented brethren amidst the falling ash. He channeled his rising panic into a solid, desperate telekinetic bulwark against the invading tide. Beside the wolves marched the golden custodes. Constantine Valdor led the Emperor's personal guard, moving with a terrifying mechanical grace that offered zero hesitation. At the Grand Plaza of Enlightenment, the defenders were systematically pushed back. Their elegant sorceries struggled against the raw, animalistic ferocity of the executioners. Elegant psychic shields shattered under the sheer physical weight of Fenrisian aggression. Brilliant scholars were forcibly expelled from the mortal realm without any mercy. Sacred scarab talismans were unceremoniously crushed beneath heavy ceramite treads. The physical manifestations of their immense pride were reduced to worthless, unrecognizable fragments entirely. As the physical city burned, the immaterial realm retaliated. Unstable warp lightning began striking the besieged defenders, punishing their sudden lack of rigorous mental control. Ahriman unleashed a devastating kinetic wave, throwing armored aggressors backward. Yet, for every executioner silenced, 3 more advanced through the suffocating, ash-filled atmosphere relentlessly. My hands tremble as I recount these terrible hours. The systematic dismantling of an entire enlightened culture is a heavy burden for the soul. High above the fracturing pyramids, Magnus the Red gathered the turbulent psychic winds. His aura burned with the desperate intensity of a dying massive star. The Cyclops locked his sorrowful gaze upon his howling brother. In that silent exchange, the absolute tragic necessity of their conflict was perfectly, mutually understood. Reality groaned and finally snapped. Massive dimensional rifts tore open near the great libraries, welcoming the insidious, unseen entities that had patiently orchestrated this downfall. From those abyssal rifts, unseen predators gleefully watched the titans collide. The wolf and the Cyclops finally met in a thunderous shockwave of pure annihilation. Every strike from the executioner's frost blade hammered against the Crimson King's failing psychic wards. It was a brutal test of raw, kinetic superiority entirely. Sparks of shattered magic rained down upon the desolate plaza. Their clash generated localized storms, twisting the very atmospheric pressure into violent, unpredictable cyclonic funnels. Meanwhile, captains like Phocis Takar fought with terrifying desperation. They hurled heavy golden automatons through the air, attempting to crush the relentless gray ceramite tide. But the flesh change claimed him entirely amidst the fierce engagement. His desperate overuse of immaterial forces catalyzed a grotesque physical transformation beyond any Imperial recognition. Constantin Valdor approached the mutant without hesitation. The Golden Custodian spun his guardian spear, systematically dismantling the corrupted scholar with cold, absolute, and unyielding precision. All around them, the greatest repository of human wisdom burned. Flaming pages of priceless, illuminated manuscripts drifted through the toxic smog like dying, tragic embers. Ahriman maintained a failing telekinetic dome over his exhausted brethren. He watched in profound horror as the executioners ruthlessly purged his beloved scholarly family indefinitely. The sacred book of Magnus was trampled beneath unforgiving boots. Its intricate metallic bindings warped severely under the physical weight of total planetary censure and destruction. Above the fray, the Crimson King faltered heavily. The relentless physical onslaught of the Wolf Lord finally broke through his heavily depleted layers of sorcerous protection. A devastating sonic roar pushed the savage beast backward momentarily. Magnus unleashed every ounce of his remaining ethereal power in one final, utterly desperate kinetic strike. Crystal structures pulverized into fine, glittering dust instantly. The shockwave leveled the surrounding courtyards, forcefully silencing both the aggressors and the frantic defenders indiscriminately and completely. Yet this monumental effort exhausted his remaining legions. Deprived of their cyclopean anchor, the Red Scholars collapsed under the immense psychic feedback looping through their ranks. The feral executioners advanced through the resulting quiet mercilessly. Prometheum flames cleansed the grand archives, ensuring no digital whisper of heresy would ever survive this day. Automated chroniclers fell from the choking skies silently. Their optical lenses shattered entirely, permanently blinding the Imperium to the true depth of knowledge lost forever here. Even now, centuries later, the chilling drafts of the sanctum carry their silent screams. The sheer magnitude of that cultural extinction remains completely beyond mortal comprehension. We are taught that this brutal censure was entirely necessary, but one must question what invisible cosmic predators truly profited from such profound, systemic Imperial self-mutilation. As molten rock consumed their physical talismans, the Thousand Sons faced total erasure. They were pushed to the absolute brink of utter, irreversible galactic extinction swiftly. Cornered against the burning heart of his ruined utopia, Magnus prepared for the end. The glowing core of his magnificent empire dimmed into absolute, terrifying darkness. Witnessing his father's impending fall, Ahriman stared into the howling void above. In that desperate second, the great ocean of chaos formally offered its sinister salvation. The once glorious capital of enlightenment was reduced to a smoldering graveyard of shattered glass. A millennium of academic triumph effectively perished within a single, horrifying solar day. Even the mighty captains who had touched the divine fell from grace spectacularly. Their miraculous gifts mutated into grotesque burdens under the crushing weight of Imperial justice. Sacred talismans lost their ethereal luster, buried permanently under layers of pulverized architecture. The proud crimson scholars were systematically transformed into forgotten historical footnotes silently. Chief Librarian Ahriman knelt amidst the cooling ashes of his beloved brothers. He tasted the bitter ashes of total defeat, utterly powerless to reverse this engineered genocide. The Wolf King surveyed his gruesome handiwork without a shred of remorse. He had executed the Emperor's harsh will with terrifying, unyielding mechanical efficiency, perfectly. Even their most guarded grimoires were left to smolder in the radioactive dust. Infinite wisdom was callously traded for the brutal simplicity of blind obedience. The Golden Host departed the ruined sphere, leaving only silence and desolation behind. Their golden armor remained pristine, completely untouched by the profound tragedy they orchestrated. Broken and physically bested, the Crimson King faced the howling abyss directly. His physical form was failing, rapidly dissolving into raw, unpredictable ethereal energy currents. Fractured crystal mirrors captured his agonizing transition. The demigod realized that survival required embracing the very dark forces he had sworn to master entirely. A profound, unnatural silence finally blanketed the weeping planet. It was the devastating quiet that always follows the complete extinction of a truly enlightened civilization. But the archives whisper of an impossible anomaly, acolytes. The story of the Thousand Suns did not end with their physical destruction on that fateful day. Hidden data fragments suggest a logic-defying event occurred right as the Crimson King fell. A desperate, unsanctioned, magical pact was sealed in the absolute, darkest void. Parchments rewrite themselves when recounting this exact moment. A massive teleportation spell, fueled by profound sorrow and forbidden warp entities, snatched the survivors away instantaneously. The Cyclops traded his loyalty for the survival of his doomed progeny. They vanished from the material universe, pulled entirely into the chaotic, swirling Empyrean depths. What truly happened to them within the Architect of Fate's twisted domain? They sought refuge, but arguably found a prison far more terrifying than Imperial execution. We hear terrifying rumors of hollow armor marching across the stars, warriors reduced to nothing but spectral dust, trapped forever within their own sealed ceramite shells. Did Ahriman attempt a catastrophic cure that damned them further? The so-called rubric remains the most closely guarded, horrifying mystery within our entire Inquisition database. Their brilliant minds were entirely erased, replaced by an agonizing, eternal automaton state. Is this the ultimate price for seeking knowledge meant only for divine beings? Even these recovered talismans still resonate with a tragic, lingering frequency. They whisper silent apologies to a universe that fundamentally rejected their magnificent, flawed vision. We are left with terrifying questions and zero comforting answers. The scholars of Prospero became the very nightmare anomalies they once swore to rigorously study. Witness the tragic culmination of their boundless ambition, my acolytes. The surviving scholars now wander a twisted, fractured realm built upon absolute, unimaginable sorrow. Chief Librarian Ahriman wanders these impossible, shifting, labyrinthine corridors endlessly. He searches desperately for a miraculous restoration that the mocking universe will forever deny him. Behold his tragic brothers, reduced to mere animated dust. They are trapped inside their own majestic battleplate, doomed to serve without any conscious thought remaining. Back on the desolate, scorched surface of Prospero, only the howling, radioactive winds remain. They sweep across pulverized glass plains, whispering forgotten, forbidden incantations forever. The lingering spiritual echo of the executioner still haunts these shattered ruins. A ghostly predator, forever stalking the phantom remnants of an extinguished, brilliant civilization. Jagged crystal monoliths pierce the darkened skies like monumental tombstones. Each shattered facet perfectly reflects a civilization that flew entirely too close to the sun. Here in the suffocating darkness of my underground sanctum, the immense weight of this tragedy presses heavily upon my frail, failing mechanical heart constantly. I, your most humble servant, am entirely burdened with preserving these condemned truths. The official Imperial records will never reflect such magnificent, terrifying, existential nuance. My faithful servo skull hums a mournful binary requiem for the fallen Cyclops. Even an emotionless machine seemingly understands the terrifying magnitude of our collective loss. The heavily restricted vellum scrolls detailing their majestic sorcery are permanently stained. Dark, oily residue bleeds through the ancient parchment like tears of profound regret. We condemn them for their profound arrogance, yet we secretly covet their monumental achievements. Humanity remains forever diminished by the purposeful eradication of their brilliance. A fractured, incomplete transcript of their foundational grimoire lies securely locked away. Even a singular surviving page emanates a cold, unsettling, and distinctly unnatural aura. The shadows stretch ominously across these ancient stone archives. Sometimes, the flickering candlelight plays terrifying tricks, projecting towering, horned silhouettes against the damp granite walls. One must wonder if the Crimson King truly vanished. Or does his fractured consciousness still vigilantly watch us from the unseen depths of the warp? This recovered jade scarab talisman feels unusually cold today. It serves as a persistent physical reminder that absolute enlightenment often requires an unimaginably terrifying sacrifice. The tragic legacy of the Thousand Suns is not merely a cautionary tale. It is a festering, unhealable wound upon the very fabric of reality. They sought to master the great cosmic ocean, but the ocean ultimately swallowed them whole. Now they are but hollow vessels, navigating an eternal nightmare. I slowly roll up this forbidden, tragic chronicle. The terrible truth must be hidden away once more, lest its toxic allure corrupts another brilliant generation. The heavy iron clasps of the archive vault lock shut with a deafening, final resonance. Our terrifying historical exploration concludes for this grim, dark evening. I gently extinguish the solitary candle illuminating my narrow desk. We are left completely alone in the absolute, suffocating darkness of our glorious, ignorant Imperium. We must learn from the tragic hubris of the Thousand Suns. Unrestrained intellect is a dangerous, venomous blade, without the heavy sheath of profound humility. Their magnificent pyramids of glass and gold lie shattered entirely. This serves as a permanent, terrifying reminder to every ambitious scholar across the vast Imperium. Knowledge is a ravenous, unforgiving predator hiding in the dark. It promises boundless enlightenment, but ultimately demands the absolute, horrific surrender of your mortal soul. Consider the dreadful fate of the rubric Marines wandering endlessly. They traded their brilliant humanity for cold ceramite and eternal, silent, unwavering mechanical servitude completely. The great ocean of the immaterium never relinquishes its cursed prizes. It feeds constantly on the boundless arrogance of those who falsely claim supreme mastery. Even a demigod of unparalleled intellectual magnitude fell from glorious grace spectacularly. What hope do mere fragile mortals possess against such overwhelming, insidious, cosmic darkness? We must remain steadfast in our blind, uncompromising devotion daily. Faith in the divine master of mankind is our only true, impenetrable shield against oblivion. May his divine eternal light guide us safely through these incredibly treacherous, terrifyingly shadowy times always. Imperator gloria in excelsis terra. If you wish to uncover more hidden Imperial secrets from the dark archives, please like this record, share the knowledge, and subscribe to the channel.